Hello and welcome back to McClaren Performance for an episode where I'm going to talk about my dad's interview with Manchester United and try and provide some insight into what he's talking about. If you haven't seen his interview with MUTV, I recommend you go and watch it because it is quite an interesting interview. It's only about 5-7, only a few minutes long really, but it's quite interesting to see what he talks about and kind of see how much of it relates to what we've talked about in previous episodes of the podcast and when we have actually talked about Manchester United. I think one thing that I noticed straight away when Dad started talking was when he emphasised really how great the players are, and it relates a lot to what my thoughts are with Manchester United and how you should approach going into a club like that at the moment. I think those players do need an arm around them. They need some support, some stability. They don't need, and I think what a lot of fans were expecting and wanted and probably would do themselves is really go into the players, try and kick some life into them as if they don't care and you can make them care. But I think what Dad is talking about is absolutely right, is that they are a great group of players and they really do want to win and play well. It's about, and we'll get into it, providing that structure for them in which they can actually put the work in that they want to put in the first place. Another thing my dad always talked about a lot, and I know it's something he loves, it's something I love to see within a football club or any team really, is lots of banter, of fun, of what we talk about in psychology, of being psychologically safe. So in that environment, it's just a soft, relaxed environment where players can now come in and express themselves. I think beforehand at Manchester United, with the pressure from the outside of the club, it was quite hard for players to feel comfortable. At least that's my perspective on it. And what is kind of come in its place now this season is a much more relaxed environment. And like I said, they just need that arm around them to say they are good players, because I think it's quite easy to forget that after, say, what happened last season. For a lot of those players to forget really how good they are. And a lot of it is just having that reminder. And it seems like Dad is definitely doing that. It seems the case just watching that interview there. What I really liked to hear, and it relates a lot to what me and Dad have talked about before, is he really put an emphasis on how the history of last season, it really is in the past, and the team itself and the staff and everybody were really looking forward as to what they could implement now. It was about forgetting what, in a lot of ways I think, forgetting what Manchester United was and looking forward to what these group of players can bring to this team and what their personality is now. How do they want to play? How does Erik Ten Hag want to play? And how can they be creative within that style of play, within that system? And it's about looking forward to that and not looking back at what has already been. I think that's really been Dad's emphasis, and a lot of the staff's emphasis also, is to have a clean slate over everything. There's no grudges held from what has happened last season, and every player has a new chance to be something better than they were before. So for me, I could really tell there was this emphasis on, yes, they're really, really good players and they needed reminding of that. And then that emphasis on creating an environment also where they can then feel relaxed, know that they are good at playing football, and then just let them do that on the pitch. And ultimately forgetting what has been before and showing them what can be in the future with their own self-expression, with their own peace in themselves and how they play, and what is actually possible under Erik and his teachings, what they can actually do going forward. So it was very optimistic, as my dad always is, to be fair, and as he should be, because they're a good group of players, they're under a great manager, the future really is looking good for their development. You can tell just from Dad talking, I think he really is looking forward to just being a part of that. And something he always talks about in the interview as well is how much he is learning from Erik, from Mitchell as well, and really just trying to be a middleman between Erik and the players to say this is what they want, this is going to work for you. So one thing was that emphasis on how good the players were. The other thing that I noticed quite a lot, and this is the thing I think that Dad's stolen a lot from me, is that emphasis on culture and environment. There's one thing he makes quite clear, is that you cannot win matches without that togetherness, without that winning culture, without the soil, the roots, the foundation, as I would call it, of the actual end result, the actual performance. You need the togetherness the understanding of each other for that to then grow into a more consistent performance. And the main way in which they're doing that, and which Dad kind of seems to allude to, is that they're really making clear standards and rules of what the players should do. It was my thoughts going in, and it seems to be the case as I watch from the outside, that the players wanted to win, they wanted to do well, but they needed a structure around them. And what I mean by that is, yes, a coaching kind of philosophy, a style of play, but also a rules of, you get in at this time, you do this at this time, you do this work on the dot all the time, every day, and then we will develop as a team. And it seems to be the case that is happening at the moment. That doesn't mean that will translate to great results and great performances straight away. We'll get into that when we talk about the game versus Brighton coming up. But it means that, and I think Dad alluded to it in the interview as well, when you set those standards day in, day out, you do those things, you see the growth over the long term, and you get more of those moments in the game where you see Eric's style of play and what he wants them to be doing. I think over the course of the season, you will just see that more and more. Just from the outside, when I look at Manchester United, I see those good group of lads there. They seem like good people, and that's a really good foundation to start from. I think people have questioned that quite a lot in terms of their attitude towards football and their attitude towards Manchester United in general, but I think it is there, and I think it just needed, like I said, that structure around it to bring that out of them. That environment, I think, and Dad talks about it, the buzz around the place, the banter, the communication between each other. It took a week or two to get to that point, but I think he's clearly seeing potential because he can see the banter and the togetherness growing within the team that I think was always there, but the structure around the team just never quite found its footing, and things were changing too often for them to really find that. And that's what's important now, is to consistently stick with this process. And Dad talked about that as well. It's a word that I think people don't like. Say with Arsenal, they don't like the process of 3-4 years of how long it's taken to develop a team, but that is the reality of things. And I think with Manchester United right now, I think Manchester United fans are aware of it, but it is going to be a process. Another thing that stood out to me, and really the main thing as well that stood out to me, was that Eric has a big plan. He understands the development of the team to the most minute details, and he knows what he wants to see on the pitch. He's got that style of play that he wants. He's got those principles of play as well. And Dad said about how he wants that on the pitch, but he wants that off the pitch as well. He wants it throughout all of his players. He wants them to act in a certain way. This is the Manchester United way, and there are rules and structures in place for that. All of the work is about what is in Eric's mind of what the team should be. And it's from taking it to there to the people on the pitch for 90 plus minutes. They talked about how they work with the staff. To me, it looked like that Mitchell was someone who really understood. He understands Eric really a lot, understands how he wants to work. He's worked with him at Ajax for a while now. So he's almost very symmetrical with Eric and knows exactly what he wants, and he's on board with that also. I think Dad's role within that, although he's not said that really in the interview, and not really something he said to me either, but something I can tell just from watching from the outside, that he is almost acting as a foil to that, challenging kind of the ideas of Eric, being almost the opposite, I think, to Eric, in that Eric isn't quite that personable person. He's very focused, very driven on his targets of what he wants to do, and Dad is really the opposite of that. Of course, he has that drive and that want to win. He definitely has that, but he also has a great emphasis on having the relationships with players, getting them on board, and like he talks about there, about a culture and environment and the banter, that's really what Dad can do, and it's really the opposite of what Eric brings. I really like how Eric works, and I've heard it quite a bit now, that he's not someone who micromanages. He's someone who picks someone for a job, tells them exactly what that job is, and then will tell them if they are or are not doing that job. And it's very simple like that. And while he doesn't cover everything himself, he's got the details there, and he trusts the people that he's got to execute those details in all those different areas. So while he is a bit of a control freak by the sounds of it, he does it in a way that is delegating and incorporates everybody. And I think that is a fantastic way to do it. It obviously is, because it's worked at other clubs before. Another thing that Dad mentioned, and I think it's really important, is that he provides the competition for the players. I think in training, a lot of people have noticed it. For example, when players do press-ups when they lose a game, that is about recreating the excitement, the environment of an actual game, and working within that. It's something I try and push and try and make sure that coaches do, that I work with, is always have competition in training, always make everything as instinctive and competitive as possible, so that that information really gets absorbed into the brain. And what that does, I think, and I find, it's much more of a feeling, and I think Dad understands that as well. You get that real buzz, that real feeling when there's winners and when there's losers, when you beat a team, when you beat a player and they have to do push-ups, and it creates such an environment in a training session. I've watched Dad take sessions before, and if you watch it online, flipping it, you can always hear him shouting and talking, and he really is that circus conductor of making sure everybody is entertained all the time with what is going on. And what it makes is, it makes a better learning experience for the players, and they take on information better, but it also creates a great solidarity within the group of players, as well as they take on other people in the team, and it makes them interact with each other. It makes them, and it brings them closer together. So that is something that they do within training, what a lot of people have noticed, and Dad talks about it there. It's hard to describe how that actually works, but I've been there with Dad when he's done that as well, and it really does create a community of people in those sessions. And I think players often talk about how good Dad's sessions are, and it's exactly for that reason. He's that conductor, and there's that competition, and everybody's really up for it all the time. Dad said in his interview there, and it's actually something he's talked to me about as well, is there's lots of running. I think it's a big part of how Eric really wants them to play, but they have to really work hard all the time. They have to work hard on the ball when they've got it to keep the ball, and they've got to work hard off it as well to get the ball back. I think it's a large requirement for being in that start 11 of Eric's team. So really the summary of it, the summary of what Dad talks about, for one, is making the players feel good, making them realise that they are good players, and making sure that it is a relaxed environment, a real enclosed environment. So there's no media sources coming into the team. There's the players, there's the coaching staff, there's the manager, and that is it. And it is that inner circle that stays the same, and the environment stays the same within that all the time, whether you win or lose. Another thing from it is what we always talk about on here, and maybe Dad's stolen it, he knows it, is that it's about culture, it's about environment. That is the foundation that makes for long-term performances. And Dad summarises there, for one thing, it is about the job on the field, it's about the style of play and executing that, and make sure the players understand that. But another thing is about getting that spirit in the dressing room, and that, I think, is really Dad's job in this moment, is to make sure the players are together. He needs to bring that banter, bring that fun, and they can get on board with that, feel relaxed and feel together, and then from that they can get through adversity on the pitch and be more resilient together, communicate with each other. It starts with that simple, nice, communicative banter kind of environment. And that really leads into Sunday, playing Brighton, first game of the season. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I don't know about the starting lineup. I don't know who is going to be playing. To be fair, I don't know or expect to know what's going to happen. We always talk about pre-season, how important pre-season is, but it's also hard to predict from the performances, from the results in pre-season, what is going to happen at the start of that actual season. So much that's learnt within pre-season. Can they actually replicate what they're doing on the pitch in a more high pressure situation, a game against Brighton? And they are a very good team, by the way, one that are coming off a good season last season, probably carrying on that momentum also. So it's definitely not an easy game to start off with. I'm definitely not going to try and predict what the score is. I'm not even going to try and predict whether we're going to win or not. Dad hasn't worked in football, been a manager maybe at QPR, that was a few years ago now, and I almost forget how kind of traumatizing it is to watch and how stressful it is to watch, because there's always so much on the line every game. I was just watching the Arsenal documentary on Amazon Prime, and I'll definitely do an episode on that soon. But it's interesting to watch Aaron Ramsdale's parents watch him play and have his debut for Arsenal. And I could see how nervous his dad was, and I know exactly what that feeling is. You can't even watch the game because it could all just go wrong. It's awful in a lot of ways. Obviously, there's the perks of that sort of life, but watching that game for 90 minutes, it's never really something I've enjoyed, to be honest. It's never fun. It's always a big stress. But still, for this, I'm looking forward to it. It's very different. Dad's not in the managerial position. It's an assistant manager position is much different for us, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. While I'm dreading the game on Sunday a little bit, I am looking forward to the start of the season because, of course, we're going to be starting FPL, and I've set up the league. I think there's about 60 of you watching. I think have joined the league. That's fantastic. It's going to be like so much fun doing that and talking about it. I think I'll do it just at the end of episodes like this within the week and talk about it a little bit. I don't think everybody's interested, so for anyone else, they can just switch off. But I do enjoy talking about it a little bit. So somewhere on the screen now, I'll probably be showing exactly what my team is at the moment. Today, I'm recording on Thursday. If anything does change, I'm going to let you know. But things might change before Friday. I think it's Crystal Palace versus Arsenal, which will be an interesting game. I'll go into why that's interesting for me because I've got those two Arsenal players there. But generally, yeah, I think this is probably what my team is going to be going forward. So in goal, I've got Aaron Ramsdale. I think it's hard to pick a keeper anyway. I think there's a lot of good options this season. But I always just like Ramsdale. They kept a lot of clean sheets last season. I like him as a character. I like having him in my team. I think he's only 5 million, so it's a good option to have in there. And yeah, the keepers are keepers at the end of the day. As long as you've got one from a good, solid team that are keeping clean sheets, I think anyone is a good option. Say like Edison as well at 5.5 million. He's probably a good option to have in there as well. Of course, I've got Trent Alexander-Arnold also. Everyone has Trent. He's probably the best player to have on FPL. He's almost like a midfielder, but he'll also keep those clean sheets as well and get those points. He'll also be getting assists, sometimes getting goals as well. Even for, I think, 7.5 million now, he's still a good option to have in. As well as, the top four kind of teams, having Reece James in, Cancelo in as well. I've got a really solid back four, a really solid defence. I think players that are going to keep a lot of clean sheets, but Reece James and Cancelo especially, they are able to get assists and they provide a lot of the attack for both of their teams. Same as Trippier as well. I had to go for a Newcastle player. I think they are going to be fantastic this season. Last season at home, I thought they were great. They were great defensively, great attacking as well. That was without Trippier, and with him being included at the start of the season, I think he'll be fantastic. I don't think it's one that lots of people are going for, but for me, he's someone I definitely want in. Going into midfield, Mo Salah. Everyone's got Salah. Of course I've got Salah. I've captained Salah. You can't not have Mo Salah. He's doing fantastic for the past 4 or 5 seasons. I don't think there's a team without him. I can't imagine there'll be many in our league without Mo Salah in it, so you've got to keep him in some way. I'll get on to Rashford in a minute, but going on to another Liverpool player, Diaz as well. Not starting a lot last season, obviously, with Mane still being there, but now he's left, he'll most likely be a consistent starting player. He's a very good player. I'm sure he'll be providing a lot of points. It's a risk to put him on, but he's quite easy to replace. I think he's about 8 million, and there are options around that price range to replace him with if he starts out having a bit of a nightmare. I've got Pedro Neto in as well. He's kind of just an option, 5.5 million. I've seen a lot of people have had him in. I had to do a bit of research on him, to be fair, before I put him into my team, realising that when he did play for Wolves, he's had a lot of injuries, but when he has played for them, he has been very consistent. He's started a lot of games, and he's only young. I think he's developing. He may start off well this season. A lot of people seem to think that. And just to fill that role for me of that 5.5 million midfielder, I think he's a good option for that. Yeah, like I said, I'd get back to Rashford. I think he's really underpriced this season. I think he's at 6.5 million. A lot of the Manchester United players are a bit underpriced. I think Sancho is as well. I think Martial is also, obviously because of how they did last season. But I might be a bit biased. But even if my dad wasn't there, I think under Erik ten Hag, they are going to improve over last season. They are going to be more of an attacking threat. And hopefully Rashford will be a part of that start 11 quite often. So having him in my team, it's a bit of a risk, but considering I'm going to the games and it does a part of it, it's a risk I really do want to take on Rashford. Up front, obviously I got Jesus as well as Ramsdale for Arsenal. I think Jesus, everybody's got him. I think he's owned by 70-something% of FPL players, which is unbelievable. And I think that's quite understandable considering the start he had with the pre-season. I think he scored a hat-trick in one game as well. He's fantastic for Man City. I don't think people have had him in their team because he doesn't start a lot for Man City, but when he has been on, and I've always seen him, I thought he's a great goal scorer. He's always been a great signing for Arsenal, but I think he's a great option for FPL as well. I'm sure he's going to get lots of goals, and you just kind of have to have him in because he's owned by so many people. If you don't have him and he scores, then you're going to be on the wrong end of that, and it's probably going to hurt your rankings quite a lot as well. As well as Jesus up front, I've got Haaland as well. Everyone's got Haaland. I'm a bit sceptical as to how well he is going to start, but in the Bundesliga, he is a strong player. He's a quick player. You would imagine he would kind of hit the ground running in the Premier League. He looked good when they played Liverpool recently. It didn't score, but apparently he did look very threatening a lot of the time, and I think that'll just carry on into the season. So it's a good option to have. I should probably be going for Harry Kane. I think a lot of people like Harry Kane, and I just never really have him in my team. I don't know why. I think he's one of those that when you put him in, he never does anything for you, but then you take him out and he does everything. And I'm not too fussed about it. I would like to have Son in, but he's just so expensive at the moment. And I used to like him about 10 million. I think he's more like 12 million now, 11 million or something like that. And I don't really want to spend that money on him. I think I'm going to regret that though, because he's probably going to carry on that good form that he had last season. But yeah, that's pretty much my team. Good luck to everyone playing this year. It should be a good one. Maybe comment and let me know what your team is, what you think of my team, what players you think I should have instead, or what players you do have instead of mine. Also comment and let me know what you thought of my thoughts on Dad's interview, whether my analysis of what he was talking about was right, whether it added anything to what he was talking about already, if it added any insight into what's going on at Manchester United. Let me know in the comments. And yeah, just keep supporting the channel really. I think everything's doing really well considering Dad's not here too often, and I'm quite surprised by how supportive everybody has been and still gaining subscribers and everything. So make sure you do carry on liking the video, subscribing if you haven't already. If you're listening, then make sure you give a review on either Spotify, on Apple, on Google, whatever it is. Keep that support going. I think we're on 5 stars at the moment, so that's really good. But yeah, that's everything. Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you again next week.